Hello, everybody, and welcome to 3 Words, a bite-sized podcast about the simple and yet very strategic choices that we can make to become the best version of ourselves. My name is Dr. Michael Brown, and I am the host of 3 Words, and I'm here with my dear friend, Casey Greenawalt, who's going to kind of kick us off with showing us and sharing with us the 3 words for today.
I'm so glad to be here. Our 3 words for today are look beyond yourself.
And I know for you, Casey, this is an area of passion, which is why you volunteered to say, hey, I would love to be in this conversation with me about looking beyond yourself. Why is this so significant for you?
You know, I'm young, and in leadership, being young, I think one of the most profound, helpful things I heard was a leader said to me once, you're the main character in your story, but you're not the main character in everybody else's story. That was really profound. I started to think about that, taking that to heart. The idea of perspective, the idea that life is more complete, it's more full when you can see the world from someone else's view. I heard the same mentor said to me, a great leader sees the room from everybody's perspective. And so this idea of looking beyond yourself, yes, I think it brings your quality of life up, but I also think it makes you a better leader. I think it helps you progress and become that best version of yourself. And so, yeah.
And I'm guessing as well, what you just described is more than a behavior, but actually a perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
That when you walk into a space, that you are more interested in others than being interesting to others. And in fact, several years ago, I coined the phrase, I guess actually just the word, life giver, because I was trying to grab a word or a language to describe that rare individual that I would occasionally meet as I traveled the country that just seemed to be so alive.
Right.
And when they walked into a space, when they walked into my presence, it was as though time stood still. Because they were so interesting, they were so interested, they were so life-giving. It's as though their cup was just overflowing and overflowing. And I just loved being with them. And so I was trying to think of a phrase or a word that would describe that unique individual, because there's not many of them walking the planet, it seems. Sure. And I came up with the idea of life giver. And I think in many ways that posture, that perspective of being a life giver versus a life taker,
right? We all know those people
a life taker that when they come into the room, they take the oxygen right out of the room.
Yeah.
I think that individual is naturally, not as always a choice, but actually naturally is an overflow of who they are, looking beyond themselves.
Yeah, and you can try to fake this. I think you can try to be interested in other people. You can try to understand someone else's perspective, but it really does. It starts with an internal conflict or an internal decision that you have to make that says, life is bigger than me. I'm not the only person here. I love the idea that oftentimes in conflict, we have our experiences, we have the way we grew up, our schooling experience, the neighborhood we grew up in, the way our parents raised us, our job experiences, all of that comes into play when we see conflict. And whether we believe it or not, those past experiences do affect how we handle those situations. And so I think although you may see the cup one way, someone else is at another part of the table looking at it a completely different way. I heard it this way too. Your perspective may be right, but it may not be complete. And it takes looking beyond yourself to be able to go, oh, yeah, I see it this way, but because of the way they grew up, because of their experience, because of their schooling, whatever it may be, they're seeing this a little bit differently than I am right now.
Well, and you mentioned conflict. And conflict for most of us is the most terrifying thing in the world, to be in interpersonal conflict with each other.
Right.
But I was just thinking about that as you shared about conflict, that I think conflict is in no way a threat to deeper relationships and to intimacy, but is actually the pathway to greater intimacy and greater depth of relationship. But we have to do it well, and we have to do it right. And it begins with looking beyond yourself. So when I'm feeling frustrated and I'm feeling offended and I'm feeling like you've hurt my feelings, my default is to not look beyond myself.
Right.
My default is to blame. My default is to wonder, how is this affecting me versus how is this affecting us? And I think in many ways, resolving conflict begins with actually owning and admitting my part in a difficult conversation, in a tense relationship. And I think that really ties into our conversation because, I mean, again, conflict resolution is, as we do in DME coaching all the time, we're working with companies and corporations and organizations, helping them resolve conflict. just these 3 words, if every person around a boardroom table, if every person around an office within their cubicles on any given day looked beyond themselves, conflict would immediately decrease.
Yes.
And when it was present, we would be able to resolve it quickly.
Right. Continuing on the idea of conflict, I've been married for just over 2 years now, and I think back to every little argument or fight my wife and I have had. Every time it's been resolved, it's because one of us has been able to do this right here. We've looked beyond ourselves. And it's typically in the expression of, hey, I can see why you were upset because I did this, this, and this. It's owning what you did and seeing how they perceived what was happening. And even if you feel right, you may not have the whole perspective, but when you can gain that, when you can look beyond yourself, I think you're right. That's when conflict becomes helpful. It becomes healthy. It strengthens a relationship because now you are able to see the world the way that person sees it a little bit more. I think that's, that helps take steps in relationships. And I think that's true in the workplace. It's true in our marriages. It's true with our friendships.
Absolutely.
We have a tendency to run from conflict, but I think it's very true that it's because we oftentimes just see it from our perspective.
Well, and you actually reminded me of some of my favorite phrases that I like to use as I'm asking questions and getting to know people, or even entering into some of those hard and difficult conversations. And a couple of those phrases are, help me understand.
Yeah.
Or tell me more about.
That's great.
And I think typically we avoid those phrases because we're feeling angry or frustrated, or we're focused, the attention is on us.
Right. So we go, how? What do you mean? Why?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
It's defensiveness, and so often we want to blame things.
Yeah.
But I think looking beyond ourselves begins with the ability to initiate meaningful conversations that solicit feedback, that actually garner responses that help us grow.
Yeah.
But also it's the art of asking fantastic questions.
Totally.
So I think the ability to ask fantastic questions, and I think that is a skill.
Yeah.
The ability to actually think about what are kinds of questions I can ask when I walk into this space, in this place, or I'm in this conversation with this individual. The ability to listen and to ask good questions and to lean in, use the idea of central character in our story, but to actually give great interest to the supporting characters in a story around my life, I think has a profound impact. And what I found is with asking really good questions, Casey, is it tends to solicit great questions in return.
Oh, absolutely.
It definitely creates this sense of understanding and appreciation. The fact that I'm taking time to pause and to listen and to lean in and to actually be fully present with you. But as well, it just increases tremendous possibility for understanding.
Absolutely. I heard it this way too, is questions pull, answers push. When you're in those relationships, those tense moments, if I can pull you in closer with a question versus giving you more of my perspective, the idea of seeking first to understand and then to be understood, it's a powerful principle, and it all starts with the perspective of looking beyond yourself.
Well, and I think oftentimes, if we're honest, a lot of our culture, a lot of the friends that we hang out with, they would admit privately even to us that they feel lonely, that they feel disconnected, that they feel like they don't have any close friends. And so the thought would be, I want close friends. So I'm going to walk into spaces looking to get close friends.
Look at me.
But what happens if we actually walk into spaces looking beyond ourselves? It is there where we establish connection.
I love
it is there where we make that really, really special, meaningful connection. And so I think this idea of looking beyond yourself, it has so many ramifications. I'm thinking even professionally, as we're sitting here thinking about this, am I the center of my office? Am I the center of my profession? Is everything about how I get and what I'm going to get versus looking beyond? What are the needs of people around me? And how can I empower this individual? And how can I give them decision-making opportunities? And how can I help people around me rise?
So good.
Versus how do I rise?
Absolutely.
How do I climb the ladder of success?
I think in leadership, in your workplace, I think that's so true, because oftentimes we're trying to climb up and we push people down along the way. But what would it look like if I came alongside of people or elevated the people around me or pulled them up if I'm in a level of leadership where I have people underneath me and pull them up as they move, right? It's looking beyond yourself, seeing that your job, your career, your life, it's bigger than you. We talk about, in the end, what matters most. You say it all the time. It's relationships. And you can accomplish all that you can accomplish in your life, but when your time stops, what are you leaving behind? It's the relationships that you have.
Well, and I'm hoping that what I leave behind is that people would say of me that he loved extravagantly.
Yeah.
And that he led heroically.
Yeah.
That I loved extravagantly, that I led heroically, both of which will never be said of me at the end of my life unless I can do two other things in advance of that. And that is to look closely and to listen carefully.
Yeah.
That as I look closely at people, at their lives, at their story, as I listen carefully to the things they have to say, being fully present with them, being more interested in them, being interesting to them, that the overflow of that is that it will be said, he loved people well.
Absolutely.
And he led people amazingly.
I love it. That's so good. That's so good. Yep. Looking beyond yourself. It's a tough thing to do though, right? Like we are naturally selfish. Our instinctive nature is to take care of ourselves.
Now, wait a minute. You telling me I'm not the center of the universe?
You are not the center of the universe, Dr. Michael Burns. I know, right? But we believe that.
Yes.
We feel that way because there are needs that we have to fulfill in order to live at the very prime of existence. That's what we're here to do, is try and live and move on. But if you want to experience life to the fullest and experience a life that is the best version of yourself, it is looking beyond what you need and what you want and being more interested in the needs and wants of others.
And it's counterintuitive. I mean, let's be honest. The fact that if I give my life away, if I'm a life giver and not a life taker, that if I'm more interested in people than being interesting to people, that actually my life will be amazing.
So much better.
And my cup will continue to overflow. We tend to think that if I'm going to grow, I need to take. If I'm going to develop, I need to grasp and I need to protect and I need to guard, which is completely not true. These three words, they're simple, they're short, but they're transformative. And they will change your life. So let's remember, look beyond yourself. For life coaching, consulting services, or to hire a keynote speaker, please visit dmbcoaching.com.